My name is Monique Pyle, and I'm here today on behalf of the Louisiana Music and Heritage Experience. And we have a very special, wonderful guest. Everybody knows her as the Soul Queen of New Orleans, Miss Irma Thomas. Welcome.
My pleasure being a part of this.
So we brought you here today. You are officially, have been since the beginning, a member on the board of the Louisiana Music and Heritage Experience.
Yes.
And we are here today because what we're trying to do is to preserve the music, the history, and everything about it and that is a part of New Orleans.
I can understand that part because it needs to be, especially for the generations that's coming up now. The music needs to be available for them to understand where they have gotten their inspiration from, and oftentimes they will take what they call samples of music that they thought was new. Mm-hmm. But has been around since their grandparents were children. So it's interesting to see how they will accept it. But they need to know, and the only way they're going to know is if the museum gives them that opportunity by recording those of us who are still around.
And that's why it's so exciting to have you as our first guest, because I feel like you have a wealth of information that you can give us.
I don't know about all the wealth of information, but I'll give you what I know.
Okay. So, Irma, you were born here in Louisiana.
Yes.
Ponchatoula.
Yes, I'm a country girl. I was born, as I said, my mama hatched me in Ponchatoula, Louisiana.
And you were raised in?
She left when I was still an infant and came to New Orleans. And so I literally grew up here in New Orleans for the early stages of my life. And then my parents took me to Greensburg to live with my father's mom, and she passed away within months after I had been brought out there. And then my father's sister had some kids, and she allowed me to stay on with her. But I came back to the city at the age of 9, so I'm literally a city girl.
Yes, you are the soul queen of New Orleans. And you have a birthday coming up in 2 weeks.
Yes, if I'm blessed to live to see it, I'll be 84.
That is so wonderful.
Going on 20.
Yes, and looking like it too.
I wish. Tell that to my knees.
So do you remember the first time you heard music and you said, that's it, I need to do that?
To say the first time I heard music would be kind of strange because I've been listening to music and being attracted by music since I was a walking infant. When I started walking, when my parents came back to New Orleans, they lived in a rooming house that had a hotel attached to it that had a club in it. And the name of the hotel was called the Vogue Hotel. And they had a musical room within that had entertainment in it. And people like Louis Jordan and those Nellie Lutch and folk like that played in it. But as a small child, children could roam the neighborhood and their parents didn't have to worry about them. Well, I would roam the neighborhood, and whenever my mother wanted to find me, all she had to do was go around the corner from where the hotel was. There was a ballroom that had what they called a autophone, but it also showed little videos, and that's where she could find me. So music has always been attracted to me, but I never thought of it as something that I wanted to do as a living because I didn't think you could make a living doing music. So I got kind of thrown into it, which is, I'm not regretting that part of it, but I can't remember when I have not been influenced by music.
Right. And you also sang in the church?
Still do.
I'm
one of the altos in the choir in Nazareth Baptist Church.
Yes. And how old were you when you started singing in church?
Well, when you're old enough to stand up and talk, you sung in church. Mm-hmm. because even as a small child, my parents put me in a daycare center that was part of a church, and we had what they call the Little People's Choir. So I sung in that choir, and then as a teenager, I became a part of the junior choir. I wasn't doing very many solos then because I think they didn't think I could, and I didn't volunteer. But on occasions, they would let us, excuse me, they would let us sing something, that one of the hymns or something like that as a group. So I've been, drawn to both sides of the industry for a long time, and I've been a participant as well. I've always sung gospel music and the hymns of the church. It was a part of who we were, and it was a part of your growing up. You went to Sunday school. If you didn't go to Sunday school, you couldn't go to the movies, and you couldn't play in the neighborhood. You had to sit on the stoops.
Oh.
So you did as you were told, and you went to Sunday school, and then you could participate with playing in the neighborhood and that sort of thing. But I'm kind of glad my parents brought me up that way, because I learned some things about life and morals that you just don't see today.
Right.
Yeah.
And you still carry that on. I think the church is a huge part of your
it's
life.
A big part of my life. I mean, the church has played a large part of my life in terms of my beliefs and my faith, and my ability to not get down when other folks find a situation where things are not going the way they want it to go. They'll go with this war is me thing. I'm not a pity party person.
Right.
I look at a situation that may not have happened the way I wanted to, but I look at it as a learning tool. What can I do that's different that would make it better? And it's called survival skills. So growing up and having parents who, made me go to Sunday school, and there was a point where they didn't have to make me. It was just something I enjoyed doing, because at Sunday school, believe it or not, I learned to read long before I was in school to be taught to read. I learned to read because of Sunday school. They used to give us these little cards that had a biblical picture on it, and underneath the biblical picture there was either a verse or something about the picture. And as a child, you don't realize you're learning to read, but I recognize words from when the teacher would tell us what it was, and I was able to learn to read from that. And by the time I got to school, I was already reading at a first and second grade level, and didn't realize I could do that.
You're a prodigy.
So that's what they would say. But I think a lot of us who were participants in that daycare center learned to read at that time. But religion has been a part of my life. It's well, I wouldn't say second nature, but it's something that I have to do because it makes me feel better.
Right.
And when I go to church on Sunday, I come out of church and I feel like the rest of my week is going to be all right.
Yeah. And you continue to give back because you've done a couple of gospel albums, and you just recently recorded one last year that hasn't come out yet.
That would be
yet,
the couple, because I had only done one gospel album. And what upset me when I did the gospel album, mm-hmm. And Rounder Records was trying to promote it. Most of the DJs, and this is why I say some of them are just plain, well, I won't say what I'm thinking, but anyway, they questioned my Christianity. Wow. Because I had recorded R&B music prior to recording the gospel album. And instead of them turning it over and reading it, my pastor at that time did my liner notes. But they didn't want to take the time to do it because I was known as an R&B singer, so they didn't want to play my CD at all.
So they didn't think you could do both of them.
I sold more one-on-one than the radio never gave me any advertisement. They never played it, so yeah. Oh well, it didn't stop me from doing what I wanted to do.
No,
and when I recorded it, I didn't record it with the idea that I was going to have a hit. But I recorded it because I felt very blessed in that I was given a talent that I am and has raised my children making a living doing it. And so that was my reasons for wanting to do a gospel album, so I can inspire others who may be in the business and let them know, you didn't get this by yourself. You were blessed with the talent, and you should share it and be thankful. So I did it as being to show my thankfulness and my faith that faith, what faith has done for me, and it has given me the tenacity to just keep hanging in there, and
Right.
I love it. I tithe and whatever I can do to help the church, I do it. And I don't do it with looking for something in return. I do it because it makes me feel good.
Right. Yeah. And that's why.
And
yeah.
that statement is more blessed to give than to receive.
Absolutely.
Yes, if you do it with the right intentions, with a good heart, you do feel much better when you're doing something good for someone.
Right. And knowing, reading your background and how you grew up and all of the stuff that you've been through to get where you are today, I mean, you have to have that.
Well,
you
yes,
have to have
yes,
something
you
that
have to have
helps you
something
through.
that's going to keep you going and give you that strength that you need, that extra bit of strength that you need to get through the situations. Because people think entertainment is all glamorous, but it isn't. I mean, it's just like life. I mean, it's a part of life. You have good days and bad days.
Right.
And I tell a lot of the youngsters who are growing up wanting to be in the business, it's not peaches and cream, sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
You need to learn both sides, learn the business part of it as well as
Absolutely.
honing your craft.
Absolutely.
And so I think a lot of them are taking my advice, because I notice a lot of them now are going to school as well, and they're learning some business parts of being in the entertainment business. Because when I got into the business, we would sign a contract thinking we were going to make big money,
Right.
and we were getting 1% of 1%. And that meant you weren't getting anything when it came to the record. But you learn.
You do.
Learn.
And
Yeah,
it's still
you learn.
changing. The business is still changing.
Oh,
It's not
yeah.
perfect yet, but,
I don't think it ever will be.
Yeah.
As long as someone can be a conniver and figure out how to get around paying you what you're supposed to get, it won't change.
Right.
It's a shame, but it's the truth.
And you were discovered when you were 19?
No, I was younger than
Younger
that.
than that.
In fact, I was, let's see, my third child was 15 months old, and she was born when I was 18. So I was almost 19.
Okay.
But
And you were working?
I was
as
a waitress. I was a waitress in a club trying to make some money to feed my family, and they were paying me $4 a night and whatever tips I made. And of course, folks didn't tip very much back then. And I got fired for singing on the job, which was interesting. If the man had any sense, he would have hired me to bring more customers into his club, but instead he fired me. So I was blessed in that Tommy Ridgely's band was a part of the group that I was performing with, and he said, "Irma, don't worry about it. You're gonna be a star one day." And I looked at him like, "Yeah, right." And so he told me about where to go and do an audition, and I didn't go. So he came and got me and brought me. In fact, he came on a Monday and took me to Ron Records to audition for a record. And that same day, the late Dr. Dorothy Labastri had a song called "You Could Have My Husband, But Please Don't Mess With My Man."
Yes.
She taught it to me that Monday afternoon, and that Wednesday I was in the studio, and that next week I had a record, which is pretty quick.
And did you go back and thank that guy for firing you?
No, I didn't get the opportunity to thank him, but I had gotten fired for singing on the job prior to that. So the one who fired me the first time for singing on the job, I did get an opportunity to tell him thank you, because he had the audacity to show up at one of my shows when I was working in the River Queen Lounge at the Marriott Hotel. He showed up and he made a request. And he had it written on the paper what his name was. And I said, I said, "Do you remember when you fired me for singing on the job?" And all the people went, "Ah." He said, "Yeah, what a mistake." I said, But I did his request.
Nice. But in hindsight, it wasn't a mistake. Maybe that's...
Well, you got to think of the times when that was going on. I came up, and my career started during segregated times. And the Caucasian people who hired us and didn't understand the music of the black folk, and so they they didn't appreciate the fact that I was singing. And ironically, I was singing to keep myself company because I was working from 11 to 7 a.m., 11 at night to 7 a.m. So what do you do when you're not washing dishes? You keep yourself company. So, but you have to consider the fact that these were segregated times and there was a lot of prejudices involved. So he allowed his prejudice to get in the way of having someone who could have made him a few nickels.
Right. And also, you were a mother at that time.
Oh, by the time I started singing, I already had 3 kids.
3 kids.
Yes,
3 kids.
By the time I was
working.
By the time I was 18, I had 3 children, and you know, my parents would babysit for me at night, and I did what I had to do to earn a living, and it worked out pretty good. I had several different jobs. That I even had a job on the riverfront at a packing company where I packed soup bunches. Many folk don't know that, but I used to pack soup bunches, and I don't know if you know what a soup bunch is. It's a bag where you had cabbage, carrots, and celery and that sort of stuff, and then be able to make a pot of soup if you wanted to. And I was getting paid 50 cents per 12 bags, and so I did that for a while. And I mean, you know, you do what you got to do. It's called survival.
Absolutely. You also worked in a department store.
Oh yeah, I worked
auto parts
yes.
store.
I started out in lingerie.
Oh.
I started out in lingerie when I was working for Montgomery Wards. When I left New Orleans, I moved away from New Orleans after a storm, by the way. Mm-hmm. And at that time, that was the one where that particular storm was called Camille, and Camille had torn up the whole, I would say, the whole Gulf Coast where a lot of my work was. And so I couldn't get any work here locally, so I decided to make a big move. And so I moved to Los Angeles. I had relatives on my mother's side in Los Angeles, and I moved to Los Angeles thinking I could get started in the music industry again, but that didn't work out because you had to pay the club to work in the club. I said, that doesn't make any sense to me, so I didn't. I decided, my uncle told me about this store that was opening up called Montgomery Wards, and so I went to Montgomery Wards and applied for a job. And the lady asked me, "Are you a salesperson?" I said, "Yes, I'm a salesperson. I've been selling me for years." I don't know how she took that, but it didn't sound the way it should have, but that's exactly what I told her. And she said, okay. So she hired me, and I was working in lingerie at the time. And then I think it was 1970, I want to say 1971 or 72, early 72 or late 71. There was a law that came out that if a female wanted to work into a male-dominant department, they had to allow her to do that. Mm-hmm. They couldn't refuse her because she was a female. And for me, when they started that, there was an opening in automotives. So I applied for the opening in automotives. But prior to that, I went from lingerie to sewing machines and vacuum cleaners. And to show you how when you're thinking on your feet, and when I was in sewing machine and vacuum cleaners, I used to cut out my children's clothes at home and sew them to demonstrate the sewing machines on the job.
Wow.
But then when this opening came up in automotives, I took it. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because when guys would come into the department and they would wanted something, I would just say, "May I help you, please?" And they would say, "Oh, I don't want a woman helping me." And it was funny because when they would go to one of the guys would look over and say, "Irma." I said, "No, they don't want a woman helping them." So, you know. But my knowledge about automobiles came because of segregation. Traveling on the road with bands, we couldn't stop anywhere to get our vehicles repaired. So oftentimes the guys carried parts to the vehicles that they thought may be needed while they were traveling. And so when they would raise the hood up, I would ask a lot of questions. What's that? And what does that do? And what does it? So my knowledge of being able to tell them, you know, what was going on, I was able to work in that department from learning because of segregation. I learned about automobile parts. And I sold 5 engines the first week and none of them were returned.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, I had sense enough to go in the automotive department where they did the repairs.
Right.
And I talked with the manager of that department and I said, "Look, when I'm selling these various parts, what else should go along with it?" And he said, "Well, Irma, when you sell an engine, you tell them that they should get their carburetors redone they should buy new spark plugs and put new stuff on it. Don't put the old stuff on a rebuilt engine. And most of the times they would buy it, and very rarely did anyone come back. I didn't have any of my customers coming back because I would sit there and explain to them why these were necessary. You know, and I would, and it was funny because I said, well, when you put on a new suit, would you put a wrinkled necktie on? No. Well, then, you know, think of your engine as a wrinkled necktie, and you don't want to have a wrinkled necktie on. So fix your engine so when you get out there on that road, you don't have to worry about it breaking down on you again. And I didn't have any refunds on any of it. But I had fun because it gave me joy to watch a guy when they would come in the department, and I would ask them, could I help him? And they would have to turn around, and the salesperson, they would get up to turn around and ask me. I said, no, they don't want a female helping them. Eventually, they got used to me being in that department, but it was fun while it lasted.
That's amazing. Brilliant.
That's why I always tell young people who want to get into the business, have a second job.
Right.
Find something else that you really enjoy doing to be able to pay the bills, because show business doesn't always pay the bills. There may be times when work gets slow and you still have bills and obligations to meet. So you need to have a second choice of how to make a living other than being just an entertainer. Because they have some lean days. And even after you get into the business, there are going to be times when things are going to get extremely slow. And you're going to read and have another way of making a living.
Right.
Absolutely. Either that'll be very penny pitching when you're making some, put some on the side. Pay yourself first.
Yes.
Always pay yourself first. And then that way you'll have a little extra. But even with that, you still need to have a second job available to you.
Mm-hmm. So after California, you moved back to New Orleans?
Well, I had been traveling back and forth to New Orleans for quite a few times. In fact, I was visiting and doing a show at what was the Fontainebleau Hotel at the time when the Hojo Massacre took place.
Oh.
I woke up one morning and that was going on, and I was wondering what was going on. Well, I was doing back and forth doing shows here in New Orleans as well as living in California. My job would allow me those days off to do that, so I didn't have to quit my job to come. I was able to maintain my Montgomery Ward job, but to come to New Orleans and work.
Nice.
And I was traveling back and forth so often until, I wound up moving back. But the reason I really moved back, I met my husband on one of the trips, my now husband on one of those trips, and he said he didn't want to live in California. And I really, was kind of tired of it myself because it wasn't New Orleans.
Right.
I had moved to Oakland by that time. And even though there's a lot of New Orleanians and Louisianians in Oakland Bay Area, they weren't like they were when they were here. They'd become, I call it Californitized. They'd become me, mine, I. That wasn't me. So, but I met my husband, and he didn't want to live in California, so we both moved back to. Well, he helped me move back to New Orleans, and it's been 50 years that we've been together.
Is he from New Orleans?
He's a Louisianian.
Yeah,
he was born in Gonzales, Louisiana, but he's a New Orleanian from being here all this time. But,
right.
Yeah, but we've been together now, been 50 years, and it's been a great marriage. I mean, he showed me some things about what was going on with me with my career at that time that I wasn't aware of, such as the gentleman who was supposed to have been my manager was writing 2 contracts. And he made me aware of that, and he said, so I fired that guy. And he said, well, what you going to do for a manager? I said, you're going to be my manager.
There you go.
He said, I don't know anything about music. I said, but we'll learn together.
Oh.
And it's been working.
That's great.
It's been working all that time. It's been working, yeah.
So then you moved back here, and you had your first single released when you moved back, after you moved back here?
Oh, I had recorded several albums before I left here.
Before you left?
Yeah, I left New Orleans, and ironically, I moved to California the same weekend that they were having a Super Bowl, so-called, but it was being held in Tulane Stadium. I moved. It was in January, ironically, and I left New Orleans in January, the weekend that they were having the Super Bowl, and I had several records out by then. In fact, Wish Someone Would Care was out. It came out in 1964. And I left New Orleans in 1970.
Right.
So I'd had several. That's why I couldn't understand why the club owners in California wanted me to pay them to work in their clubs, and it made absolutely no sense.
Right. So when you moved back here, is that when you opened the club, the Lions?
Not really. When I first moved back, we didn't really open up the club until, I want to say, in the early '80s. In fact, it wasn't really meant to be that way. My husband and a friend of his were supposed to do the club together, and the guy, after he went through all the trouble of getting the corporation situation set up and all that, he changed his mind. And so my husband said, well, I guess I'm stuck with a club. But when we got the club, it wasn't meant to be a music club at that time. There was a room on the other side where another lady who was she did, what did she do? She did, when you need you go to jail and you need a...
Bella?
Her name was Irma too, believe it or not. She had an office there, and when she moved out, the room became available, and I used to use it to practice in. The band and I would rehearse there. And so during one of the I want to say Jazz Fest weekends, we were back there rehearsing, and some folk came by while we were rehearsing, and they came in and they sat down. In fact, we didn't have a lot of room at that time, and they sit down. They wanted to hear it. So, of course, my husband, always having that business mind, he said, I said, an opportunity here. So we started charging to come in, and we didn't. In fact, the club, we had to redo it some years later. But when it first started out, that was where I rehearsed. And I started cooking red beans and rice, and we would give them the red beans and the rice, and they would buy a drink, and they would sit there, and we would go on to like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's fun.
And so that's basically how the Lions Den wound up being an entertainment club, but it didn't start out that way. It started out just to be a neighborhood bar.
Oh, wow.
And so it turned into being an entertainment club.
And then that lasted till about early 90s?
It lasted until Katrina came. Katrina took the club away. And we had some wonderful times back there. We met a lot of people who became friends with us, and we're still friends today.
Where was it located?
It was on actually the address was on Broad Street, but the entrance was off of Gravia Street. It was right at the corner of Gravia and Broad, across from the courthouse. Yeah. Oh. But we had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In fact, the signs stayed up there for quite a couple of years before they took it down after Katrina. And finally, they took it down. We still get asked, when you going to open up the club? Never again.
Never say never.
Well, no, because, my husband and I are in our 80s now, so that's not something that we want to really be, you have to, when you have a club, that's work.
It's your life.
That's a lot of work. It becomes your other life. So, no, that was not what we needed. And a lot of other folk who were working for us that we trusted when we were on the road, they moved away and they didn't come back. So we chose not to reopen another club.
And so Katrina happens and you moved to Gonzales.
We didn't move to Gonzales. That's the only place we could get.
You escaped to Gonzales.
Ironically, the weekend of Katrina, I only had one job that month.
Which was it?
That was a job that I played Antones in Austin, Texas. The band and I, we flew, but the bass player's wife decided she wanted to come. So instead of him flying, they drove to Austin, Texas. And so when we left, that was the only job I had that month. That's why my faith is so strong, because God knows if I had stayed, I'd have probably been one of the folks on the roof, because we never leave New Orleans for storms.
Right.
That's just something you didn't do, because most of the times the storms would go through and it would be over with. But we decided, when we left, we went on up there, and it happened while we were there. And I got up that morning and turned the television on to see the news and saw, and they were talking about New Orleans is flooding. And I said, wait a minute. So I turned the TV up and looking at it, and where I'm situated, they were calling this Chalmette. the reporters didn't know the geography, so
Right.
they were calling it. And I actually saw my home, the roof of it. I could actually see the roof of my home on the news. So I told my husband, I said, honey, we don't have a home to go to. He said, what you mean? So they were showing where the interstate, and there's an area on the other side of the bridge, the high rise, that said Almanasta, Louisa exit. And the water was up to the sign. And I said, look at the water where it is. He says, yeah, but I said, no, that's where the city of New Orleans, that's how much water is in the city of New Orleans. And so he realized that we couldn't get back. In fact, there was no flights coming this direction. So we stayed in Austin almost a week before we were able to get back to Louisiana, period. And then finally, the flight that we had to come back to New Orleans, they allowed us to use those tickets to get into Alexandria, Louisiana. And a couple of my husband's relatives came to Alexandria and picked up the van, and those of us who came back to New Orleans. And some of the relatives in Gonzales put up some of the guys and myself, and we stayed there. And people were looking for me and wanted to do interviews and what have you. And finally, I was able to contact someone from New Orleans and let them know that we were fine, that we weren't here at the time of the storm. And when we did get back to Gonzales, we couldn't find really, other than staying with relatives, there was nowhere for us to go. So we decided, well, we're going to be here for a while. So we were looking for a place to rent. And because, we had relatives, and I couldn't have reporters coming and infringing on their, their situation. So finally we found a subdivision that some homes were being sold. And the lady told us, if you don't want to buy, here's the keys. Y'all can stay here until you find what you want. Yeah, wow. They actually gave us the keys to a house that they were about to sell, it was up for sale. Right. And she also took us around to see some other properties that they had. And all of the houses out there were small. So since she was kind enough to let us have the keys to the house, we bought the house that she gave us the keys. So, and we wound up buying a home in Gonzales. Wow. So it your life can change overnight, and I realize how much stuff doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. As you can see, I'm not missing any stuff because what happened, we lost everything. There was nothing here that was truly that salvageable. I was able to come back when we were able to get back into the house. I was able to get some of my wardrobe that wasn't too bad. The salt water didn't damage them too bad. And the gown that I wore to the Grammys was what I had salvaged from here. But you realize that, when you come in and you look at your property and there's nothing there but the pillows and the posts that the walls were built onto, you learn that stuff is not that important anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
as long as you have yourself and...
Well, we had each other, and our family members were able to get out. The grandchildren and our daughters and sons who lived here were able to get out of New Orleans before the storm, because they were saying how bad the storm was going to be. Right. They were out of the city when the floods came, so we were thankful that they were able to get out. And so when we purchased a home, some of them came and spent some time with us while they were looking for places to go. But you realize life can be very quickly changed by Mother Nature.
Absolutely.
And so
as we learn, even
I didn't worry about it. I didn't worry about it. After that, I said, you know what? Stuff is stuff. Right. But when people realized that I lost everything, they started sending me stuff. So a lot of the stuff you see was stuff that was given to us.
Wow.
Like Quint Davis gave us the Mahalia Jackson picture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And all the other things you see up there was gifts that was given to me.
How beautiful.
So I don't miss anything.
Right.
Because I have more now than I have been in terms of stuff. Mm-hmm. Clothing wise, I'm multitude of this and that, and you learn that you're blessed in spite of all of the bad stuff. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel very blessed in that people loved me enough to want to help me get back on my feet, both financially as well as with things and stuff. And so I try to help those that I can as much as I can when I can help them with something that they need, because you learn that you never know, even a kind word, what it means to someone, a hug, what it means to someone, especially when you've gone through something traumatic.
Right.
And that was very traumatic. And I'm not going to tell anyone that I didn't cry. Yes, I cried, but I didn't cry so much because of the loss. I cried because of the devastation to those folks who didn't have a way to get out.
Right.
And how their families felt. And it took me a few days to really, get through that part. But because of the faith and that I have, the strong faith that I have, I've been fine. I haven't had to go to a psychiatrist or anything. My psychiatrist, I pray to him every day.
Right. And does music?
Oh yeah,
music is so spiritual and so helpful. And I mean,
yes, music plays a large part of my togetherness. The band can always tell when I'm angry because of the choice of songs I make on stage. They say, "Oh, she's having a bad day today." Listen at what she's singing. Well, I think you choose songs that get you through stuff, and a lot of times, a lot of my fans who have been fans of mine since the beginning of my career are still my fans. Those who are still alive, and so because of having those kinds of fans, I don't work from a set list.
Right.
My fans are my set list.
Your fans.
Yeah. Because over the years, watching other entertainers who get on stage and sing what they want to sing and the audience leave upset because they didn't hear their favorite song, I choose not to do that. I choose to allow my audience to request what they want to hear. Because when you spend the kind of money it costs you now to see a show and you don't hear your favorite song, you leave there very disappointed. But I know that there's a way that you can introduce something new to the audience, but give them what they want, before you delve off into the new stuff.
Right.
And ironically, I had been nominated for a Grammy 3 times, and the third time was The Charm. But it just so happened that the songs on the album that won me the Grammy were songs we had chose before Katrina, but a lot of the songs were kind of like therapy songs.
Right.
Yeah, because there's one on there called In the Middle of It All. And it's been, almost 20 years now? 10 of those 20 years, every time I sing it, I couldn't get through it without crying.
Oh, wow.
Because we were in the middle of it all.
Right.
Yeah. And there's another one called Lay Me Down a Pallet on the Floor. Can you imagine how many pallets got laid on the floor after Katrina? But those songs were chosen long before. And recorded. Wow. We recorded them afterwards. We did a recording in Milton, Louisiana at Dockside Studios, where you had to go under a tree to use your cell phone. I'm told now that you don't have to go under the tree anymore, but it was, it's funny how things happen that you can laugh about. But we were in the studio and the musicians and I, we were doing those songs, and all of us had moments where we shedded a tear because some of the songs we could relate to, and it helped us. It was very, very good therapy for us.
Right.
But that's the album that won the Grammy.
And so, which brings up a point of the importance of music in Louisiana culture.
Very much so. Louisiana, the irony that folk don't understand, especially those people who come as visitors, and I don't call them tourists, they come as visitors. When we had the club, we've had several folk who came to visit us at the club to catch my shows, wound up moving to New Orleans because they said that they loved the music. They loved the way the music got them through things that they were going through. They love the food because we don't garnish our plates with the stuff. We cook with the garnishments that they put on the plates.
Right.
And so, New Orleans is the beginning of a lot of the music that's heard out there today, because I'm told that Dixieland jazz was started in New Orleans by the musicians who played for all the different brothels and what have you. But the state of Louisiana has a unique musical gumbo, and that's for lack of a better word to put it. Every kind of music you can think of, there's a musician who was raised in the state of Louisiana or in New Orleans for that matter that plays it. So you can come to New Orleans and hear every kind of music under the sun because of we have all these different nations in this city that we've gleaned up of each other's music. And so it's just different. And plus, New Orleans is a very hospitable city. We will offer you a plate of food as opposed to offering you a drink. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of folk find that interesting. And well, why you want me to? Well, don't you eat? And food is a good way.
Right.
And once they've eaten it, they're hooked.
Right.
You know, but New Orleans is a very unique city because of the fact that we are a very friendly city. In spite of so many of the musicians who were not able to come back, those younger ones who are here, who have moved here, that realizing that this is who we are and this is what you have to be if you're going to live in this city, because you have to stay humble.
Right.
You don't have to, but you're better off if you are humble.
Absolutely.
Because the music is what make people love this city. It's the first thing that they come to hear. Second is the food, and then the scenery and the surrounding neighborhoods come third. Because it's a very unique city, because it's one of the largest cities in the state of Louisiana, but we have so much history here from the early times, you know, and so it makes us a very unique place. Yeah. And I am so thankful that I got started here.
Me too. Everybody is. But I think there's a special thing also about musicians in New Orleans that I've experienced. I'm not a musician. I'm just a lover of music, and I like to be around it and like to experience it. But there are so many musicians here that are so kind and willing to teach the next generation and willing to say, this is what you have to do, or give a little tidbit or give a little, something to the next generation, where that doesn't happen in a lot of other cities.
Well,
it's very unique here.
We want it to continue. We want the music of our state to continue because it's very unique in that way. We're not in a competition here in this city. Mm-hmm. The musicians are not in competition with each other. We share each other's time. We share our knowledge with each other. I try to share my vocal abilities with young ladies who are having problems learning to sing. You don't learn to sing. You have a voice. You need to learn how to use it properly. I was blessed in that I lost my voice for about 4 months to learn how to use it properly. A gentleman who was a doctor, his name was Dr. Zurich. When I was overseas, touring overseas, I was working some jobs. I mean, I was playing 5 and 6 jobs in a 24-hour period and traveling from various cities. And so when I got back to the United States, I didn't have a voice. And they thought I was going to have surgery on my vocal cords. Dr. Zurich says, no, but you're going to have to shut up for 3 months.
Yeah. How'd that work?
And telling me to shut up for 3 months is like, okay. But I did what he told me. And aside from that, he told me, Irma, singers do one thing really wrong that they should never do, and that's suck a raw lemon. Because if you make icebox pie, you use raw lemons to cook the icebox pie. That's what it does to your vocal cords. So that's the first thing I tell all singers that come to me and want advice. That's the first thing I tell them. Never suck a lemon. Make lemonade, make lemon tea, but don't suck a raw lemon. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. And then the second thing I tell them, you need to learn how to breathe properly when you're singing. So when you want to hold a long note, you're not catching your breath trying to hold a long note. So I'll give them the benefit of things that were taught to me. And I tell them, this is not a competition. Mm-hmm. You know, we're not in competition with each other. We want you to carry on our music once we're gone. Somebody has to carry this music forward. And we don't want it to die. We want it to stay the way it is. Yeah, we are laid back and no, we don't want change. We really don't. Because why would you want to change something that's working? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
So we want the younger people to learn our trade. to learn that trade. Learn how to play the music of your area. Learn all of it. Don't just learn one genre. Learn all of it. So whenever you're on a job, someone asks for something that's not your normal genre, then you'll be able to do it.
Right.
You know. The only thing I don't do gospel music when I'm doing my blues.
Right.
But they'll ask, and I'll politely tell them, no, come to church and I'll sing it for you at church. But I don't do gospel music when I'm doing it. A lot of folk end their shows with either Amazing Grace or something like that. I don't do that.
Okay.
I don't want to give a mixed message to my audience.
Yes.
So a lot of the young people, when they ask me that, that's what I tell them. But I say, you do what you feel comfortable with. If you're comfortable doing it, then fine. But I don't do it.
Right.
That's just me. But I try to give them the benefit of my knowledge in terms of how to give a good show. Never turn your back on your audience unless you're turning around to say something to the band. Try to give the audience what they want. Check your audience out and see what kind of reactions you're getting from various songs that you're singing. And if they're not doing anything, switch gears.
Right.
So what I did, instead of having to switch gears, I decided, okay, I'm going to ask you what you want to hear.
There you go.
And if I remember the song, I sing it. And if I don't remember all of it, I sing what I remember, and we fake the rest. But I let them know that's what's going to happen. So consequently, I don't know if it's a consequence or not, but because I allow my audience to tell me what they want to hear, they leave happy, because a lot of those songs mean something to those different people. And what do I know, which song to sing that's going to hit what they want?
Right.
So if they tell me what it is, then I'll sing that song for them. And if the band don't know it, I'll do it a cappella.
Right.
I don't have to have a musician to sing.
Yeah.
I sing it a cappella for them.
You're a professional.
I want them to leave happy. And
Right.
that's what entertainment is all about. You're there to make your audience happy. And in order to make your audience happy, find out what they want to hear and do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
But that's one of the reasons that, the museum is important.
Right.
To keep the music there so the young people can come and listen and hear what the generations before them have been doing, so they'll be able to carry it on to the next generation. And we want that to keep going forward year after year, generation after generation. And the only way they can do that is because of the Music Museum.
And how confident are you in that we can get this done?
Well, I'm going to do what I can do.
Well, there you go.
I'm going to participate and do as much my part in terms of trying to keep it going. Ironically, a lot of female singers don't do any of my music. I don't know why, but they sing a lot of other folk songs, but I very rarely hear them singing the songs that I've recorded, which I'm okay with that. They have their reasons for not wanting to do it. Maybe they think I would be upset by it, but I wouldn't. I would sit there and enjoy every minute of it. But I want to do my part to be able to be there for them, to hear what I've done and understand my reasoning behind some of the things I say about doing the audience what the audience want.
Right.
I've been criticized for that, saying, well, she don't have a show together. Yes, I do. I have my show together. There they are all out there. That's my show.
Absolutely.
The audience, they pay the money to come hear their favorite song.
I mean, what better present is that for your audience?
There you go. That's why I'm still around, still singing.
Absolutely. And that's why people are still coming.
I honestly believe that, that a lot of the fans who became fans when I did what they call crossover music, it wasn't so much crossover, but my audience became predominantly white back in the middle 60s. It's Raining and Rule of My Heart, when those songs were out, a lot of the folk who hired me didn't know I was black. Because they didn't put your picture. They didn't put black folks' pictures on their albums and nothing. So that's why they had all these different groups. They had, I think, 6 or 7 groups of Platters and 8 or 9 groups of the Drifters and all that. They didn't put the pictures on there. So then they finally realized why all these groups was popping up, and they started putting black folks' picture on their albums and stuff. But, I don't mind. I really want to be a part of the history.
Right.
And in order to be a part of the history, you have to let them know what it is you've been doing or trying to do to keep that history going.
And that's being relevant and doing interviews like this than speaking out. I have a question, and I don't know if it will be a hard one for you. And if it is, you can tell me no. What is one of your favorite songs to perform?
It's difficult to say which is my favorite song because I only choose songs that I don't mind living with. And so I could say 95% of the songs that I have recorded are my favorites because I choose songs that have great stories, that make sense. I don't do songs that are repetitious of one line for 30 minutes or 5 minutes or however long the song is supposed to be. I don't do those kinds of songs because they don't make any sense to me. So how are they going to make sense to somebody else?
Right.
But I try to choose songs that has great storylines, something that I can relate to even when I need a song to get me through a situation that I might be having that day or that moment or whatever. And so it's kind of difficult to say what's my favorite song. I could say that I lean more toward songs that I've written, which is I Wish Someone Would Care, which is a lot of folk wish someone would care.
Right.
And at the time when I wrote it, I was wishing someone would care because I was going through a situation with my marriage at that time, not this present marriage, but a former marriage. And so those are the kinds of songs that I choose that are good storylines, that are the songs that'll get you through situations, make you happy, or get you through a sad situation. And so it's kind of difficult to say which one is my favorite.
Yeah.
They all are.
Right. No, it's true because that's how I feel. Like I couldn't pick a favorite song. I have a favorite song for a particular moment.
There you go. Exactly.
And is that the same with a hymn?
Yes, I have several hymns that I really, really like. There's one called I Am Redeemed that I love. And there's another one called Order My Steps. There's another one called How Great Thou Art. I could go on and on and on. I could go on and on and on with all of the various hymns. There's one that just came out that I think of the goodness of God. I love you, Lord. Da, 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 da. I love that song. And so there's several hymns, and there's some that I sing on special occasions. When we have Communion Sunday, because we don't take communion like the Catholics every day during the day. We take communion once a month. And on Communion Sunday, there are certain songs that I sing for Communion Sunday. And then when I'm chosen to do a solo, I pick a solo that I feel like that day, that's just what I want to hear. Yeah. And sometimes someone in the congregation will say, Irma, next time you get a solo, would you please sing such and such a song for me? And I said, no problem. So the next time I'm doing a solo, I'll do the song for them. It's the same thing. When we're in church, there are certain songs that bring memories to you that help you get through a situation. Now, there's a song that my dad, every time I hear it, I think about my dad because I used to dance with my dad. And so there's a song called Dance With My Father Again. It's not a hymn, but it's a great song. And every time I hear it, I think about my daddy because when I was a young girl, and they could take kids to the ballroom then, I would dance with my dad. So, it's songs are meant to get you through situations or remind you of happy times. And some of them remind you of sad times, but at the same time, you might need that reminder.
Absolutely.
Every now and then to bring you back down to earth. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why you really can't pick and choose a favorite song because there can be so many. And as you said, you pick a song according to what state of mind you're in at that time.
Yeah. Do you think moving into the future that Louisiana, the musicians here, will be able to keep somewhat of that traditional music incorporated?
I'm going to be very optimistic about it and say yes. One can never say, but so far as we know of and as far as we've been hearing, a lot of the younger musicians are interested in the older music, which gives me hope about it being carried on and carried forward. A lot of the young ones are playing the old music that makes sense to everybody. So I'm very optimistic that yes, the future is holding the possibility that the music will continue for a long time.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I hope so also, but I also think that it's things like this that are going to, talking about it, the museum, keeping it out there, keeping the conversations open, your generosity, your education and your information that you give. I think all of those are hugely important.
Well, I hope that that the families of, in fact, my family, I will make them aware. Well, they do. Whenever I tell them I've done something like this, they go to the museums. In fact, there's a thing that's being done in the I can't remember what they call the display, but I'm narrating about New Orleans in this particular place. But I let my family know about, especially my grandchildren, about where they need to go to listen to music the way it's supposed to sound. And they listen to me. So I said, I hope that in the future that people can look back at this and come to the museum and listen to Dr. Irma tell her side of the story.
Yes.
I got to get used to that title. But I am hoping that what we've sat down and talked about in terms of the music and what I've been through and how I got to where I am today, and hopefully the children who are interested in being in the business in terms of performers and pianists and horn players or whatever as performers continue to, I'm not saying don't learn anything from the new generations of music, but if they listen to the new generation of music, they're getting their thoughts from the older generation anyway.
Yes.
So that's what gives me hope, in fact, that I know that what the museum is doing to keep the music up front and alive is going to work. Because whenever people come to New Orleans, I tell them these are must-see things that you must go see. And they usually listen to me. So, you notice I said usually listen to me. And they're never disappointed. And I'm thinking and realizing that even though, we've been here chatting for whatever time we've taken to do and get as much of this history down for them, that they take it and use it and move forward and keep the museum going, because without places like the museum, the music, especially dealing with music and the genres of the various genres of music, and showing those of us who have things that we can put in there that was a part of our careers, show them this is what you can look forward to if you do what you love to do, but do it because you love it, not because you're trying to make a living.
Right.
That's one thing that they need to keep in mind. Mm-hmm. But the museum is going to keep the music alive because of what we're doing. Those of us who are still around, who lived through those earlier days coming up in the state of Louisiana and in New Orleans, who played those early days of music and all those early clubs where we had to sing in the club but couldn't dress in the dressing room, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. They need to know this, and they need to understand that it's a life. It's a choice of life that you choose to be a musician or an entertainer. But in order to do it right and get it right, museums are necessary to have the music available to you so you can choose and listen and learn at the same time.
Mic drop. I mean, you summed it up so beautifully. That was, yes. And again, I just wanted to mention you have 2 albums. One has just come out with Galactic, or it's coming out?
I just finished one with Galactic, and I think they're going to release it in March.
Okay.
I also have a book that's gone to the publishers, and hopefully it'll come out sometime between now and the summer. Mm-hmm. And so
you have the gospel album.
I'm not sitting on my laurels.
No, you're not. And you have the gospel album and the documentary coming out.
I'm not sure when they're gonna come out with it, but it's
in the works.
Pretty close. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
So I love what I do.
You do. I mean, yes.
And I don't plan on stopping. I've slowed down, mainly the reasons I've slowed down because of health issues. But as you get older, you realize some things just wear out.
Yeah, exactly.
Some things just wear out. But I want them to know that, yes, this month, the month of February, is my birthday. I'll be 84.
February 18th.
And whenever they come to the museum and they look at this old lady, they say, she didn't do too bad.
The state has very important priorities like education, healthcare, roads. And if the governor and legislature were here now, what would you say to them about why the museum is a priority for them to fund instead of these?
First of all, I would remind them of the days when they were in college and in high school, and they were listening to those of us who kept them busy, who maybe introduced them to their wives or their girlfriends. And this, for no other reason, should be a reason they would want to keep the music alive, because of the memories that they have of listening to those of us who are still around to do the performing. And so because of that, they should want to help the museum become one of the better museums in the state of Louisiana. In fact, one of the best museums in the United States, because only in New Orleans can you have this kind of information to give them.
Absolutely.
So as they have become leaders in the United States and leaders in this state, they themselves should want to keep the museum going, because of the memories that the music that's in that museum has brought to them in their lives. I have been blamed for a lot of babies. I have been blamed for a lot of divorces. I have been blamed for a lot of marriages. If nothing else, life.
Right.
They should want to keep the museum open for the music that brought life into their lives.
Absolutely.
Help them get through their lives.
Yes.
And for no other reason, it's music. And they can be up there popping their fingers and talking all that political stuff. Right. But I bet you when they go home, they listen to music. And it's 95% of the time, it's Louisiana music.
Absolutely.
So for no other reason, keep the museum alive.
Yes. You heard it here.
From Dr. Irma.
From Dr. Irma. Thank you so much.
It has been my pleasure.
It was
anyone
so great.
Who may be watching this documentary in the Music Museum, I would say stop and take notes. Not just from me, but from all of us who are sharing our lives with them. Stop and take notes and realize there would be nothing without music. There's music in the Bible. It's called Psalms.
Yes.
So we must need it. In order to keep it, they need to take notes.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.